I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Today is Monday, July 17th, 2023, and we've got a great program scheduled for you. As promised, we're going to deliver what I call robust conversation, and today I guarantee you will be no exception. Before I begin, I want to again thank you for joining wherever you are. If you're on either the YouTube Insight News platform or the YouTube Black Press USA platform, thank you for being here. If you're checking us out through either of the three Facebook platforms, that's Black Press USA, Insight News, Al McFarlane, or Twitter or LinkedIn. However you do it, we're glad to connect with you. We want you to help us grow this audience, this community, this conversation. And you can do that by switching over now or later to the Insight News YouTube channel, YouTube Insight News MN. Subscribe, like, and share. Tell everybody you know. An important conversation is going down right now, and that you want to be a part of this. Well, we want to begin also by thanking our friends over at the Minnesota Department of Health. There's going to be a COVID vaccine event coming up July 27th, and it's out in at the CAPI OIC on Brooklyn Boulevard, 5930 Brooklyn Boulevard in Brooklyn Center. And they've got several dates, but one coming up 27th of July into August and September and October. We'll be reminding you about these opportunities to get vaccinated. We want to remind you to follow the protocols. This event is open and free to the public. We encourage you and everybody in the community to get vaccinated and to make sure you're protected. Well, let me begin. The theme today is an important one. I want to bring in my guest and colleagues today, Ndugu Yusuf Mjini and Sherlyn LaChapelle, to talk about the 1619 project in particular. And Yusuf sent an article over that we want to get into today. And it's an article that from New York Times Magazine about the 1619 project. The headline in the article says, "Our democracy's founding ideals were false when they were written, but Black Americans have fought to make them true." And this was the piece authored by Nicole Hannah-Jones, August 14th, 2019. I want to jump right into this. And Brother Yusuf, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Thank you, brother. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Sister Lachelle.
Well, as I said before the program, Yusuf, thank you for just focusing our attention on this conversation. And what I envision is going to happen is I want you to kind of set the stage for the conversation, and then Sherlyn and I will engage you and engage the topic. But set us up. What are we talking about? Why is it so important? And where do we go from here?
Sure. The 1619 project is a landmark, globally significant piece of journalism. And when I ask people about it, Al, they say, "Oh yeah, I heard something about that. What is this 1619 business?" And I ask them, "Have you really heard about it?" Because the 1619 project, which incidentally won a Pulitzer Prize, was launched in August of 2019 in a 100-page issue of the New York Times Magazine. And I went to darn near every drugstore and newsstand in the city of St. Paul trying to find a copy of the New York Times so I could read it when it came out. All of them were sold out. So I went to the New York Times store. They have a store on the internet, and it took me 6 months and $34 to get a copy of the magazine that comes free with the Sunday New York Times. That was the edition that was devoted to the 1619 project. Okay, let me back up. The 1619 project was created and edited by a sister who in her early 40s from Waterloo, Iowa, Nicole Hannah-Jones, who you mentioned earlier, pulled together a group of people in the New York Times, gave them more than a year to research the story. And it was intended to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans. Let me repeat that. Enslaved Africans, because in this piece and in the subsequent pieces and the book that followed of that same title, the 1619 Project, they didn't use the word slaves. They used the word enslaved people.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't use the word masters. They used the word enslavers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because to refer to people as slaves diminishes their humanity and their human dignity. And there were no slaves in Africa. There were African people who were kidnapped, captured, and transferred to the Caribbean, Central South Latin America, and after the Haitian Revolution to the United States, where the Catholic plantation owners came. Only 3% of the slaves came to the United States. 85% went to Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
And they were enslaved upon their arrival here in this hemisphere. Okay, and Haitian Revolution was the only successful slave revolt, okay, in this hemisphere. But the 1619 Project was published in August of 2019, 400 years after a group of 20 and odd captive Africans arrived in the Virginia colony of Point Comfort at the mouth of the James River on a ship that some identified as the White Lion, others as the good ship Jesus. And these 20 to 30 Africans have been captured in joint African-Portuguese raids in the kingdom of Ndongo, which is modern-day Angola. And as I said, landed at Point Comfort in the mouth of the James River in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. So it was 400 years later in 2019 that the 1619 Project was initially published as a series of 10 essays in the New York Times Sunday magazine, August 24th, 2019. Okay? Now, the project quickly grew into a larger endeavor encompassing multiple issues of the magazine with materials and other New York Times publications, as well as a school curriculum developed in collaboration with the Pulitzer Center. And as I mentioned, the initial essay by Nicole Hannah-Jones won a Pulitzer Prize. Okay, the Smithsonian Institution recruited a panel of historians to research, develop, and fact-check the content under the condition that almost all of the content would be from African-American contributors,
Mm-hmm.
deeming the perspective of Black journalists, historians, and writers an essential element of the story that needed to be told about the legacy of slavery over the previous 400 years and continuing, one could say, in July of 2023 down to this day, to
That's right.
2019, when the article was published. Now, our democracy's founding ideals were false when they were written. Black Americans have fought to make them true is the subtitle of the essay that I shared with you by Nicole Hannah-Jones, which is a primer to the 1619 Project, a preview or the foreword. And Nicole Hannah-Jones said that when she learned this information as a student in Waterloo, Iowa, in the public schools, it not only angered her, but it empowered her, and it made her want to learn as much about our history in this country as humanly possible. And the essays that were expanded included American Capitalism is Brutal. You can trace that to the Plantation by Matthew Desmond. How False Beliefs in Physical Racial Differences Still Live in Medicine Today, an essay by Linda Villarosa. What the Reactionary Politics of 2019 Owe to the Politics of Slavery, an essay by Jamel Bowie, who is an editorial columnist with the New York Times. Why is Everyone Always Stealing Black Music by Wesley Morris. How Segregation Caused Your Traffic Jam by Kevin Cruz. Why Doesn't America Have Universal Health Care? One word, race. An essay by Janine Interland. Why American Prisons Owe Their Cruelty to Slavery. An essay by Brian Stevenson, the founder of the Innocence Project. And two fabulous museums on lynching and slavery in Montgomery, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
The Barbaric History of Sugar in America, an essay about Khalil Gibran Muhammad, how America's vast racial wealth gap grew by plunder, an essay by Tremaine Lee. And again, in the book, there are 53 essays across 18 chapters. Now, let me say a little bit more about Nicole Hannah-Jones. Okay, she was born in 1976. So she was in her early 40s when she shepherded this project through the New York Times magazine. She's an American investigative journalist known for her coverage of civil rights in the United States. And she joined the New York Times as a staff writer in April of 2015, won a MacArthur Fellowship in 2017, something you and I know a lot about, although we haven't received ours yet. I mentioned she won the Pulitzer Prize in 2020 for her work on the 1619 Project, and the fact that she is the inaugural Knight Chair in Race and Journalism at the Howard University School of Communications, wow, where she also founded the Center for Journalism and Democracy. And again, she had been offered a position at an Ivy League university, and the faculty were in an uproar about her credentials, about her background, about her authorship, the Pulitzer Prize. Did she really deserve to be in the School of Journalism? And she said, look, later for y'all, I'm turning that position down, and I'm going to a historically Black college and university, Howard University in Washington, D.C. Good for you, sister. Okay. In October of 2020, New York University's Center for Journalism Institute named the 1619 Project as one of the 10 great works of journalism in the decade between 2010 and 2019. Now, what has happened since the initial publication and the extended expansion of the original essays, which just keep growing to this day? Let me take 2 minutes, lay that out, and then open it up for discussion among the three of us. Donald Trump, in his final few months as president of the United States, vowed to ban the 1619 Project from state curricula, accusing Hannah-Jones and educators of teaching their students to hate their own country. Okay? Echoing Trump's proposal, Republican lawmakers also sought to ban the project from state curriculum. 79 bills were introduced by U.S. Senator Tom Cotton at the federal level, by State Representative Mark Lowry in Arkansas, State Representative Skylar Wheeler in Iowa, Hannah-Jones' home state, Senator Angela Burks-Hill in Mississippi. Okay, by the end of the summer, 27 different states had multiple bills introduced, echoing the language and intent of Cotton's bill. No thanks to, what's this group in Florida called that sends legislation to Republican legislators in state legislatures around the country. They're now sending them to Republican members of city councils, county boards, village councils, and county commissions. Under Ron DeSantis, the 1619 Project was what led him to ban it and anything about race being taught in Florida public schools. So all this anti-woke business that's occurring across the country stemmed from the power and the beauty of the 1619 Project. And I would encourage anybody who wants to learn about Dred Scott, who was imprisoned for 17 years at Fort Snelling, right next to the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, when the Supreme Court handed down the Dred Scott decision that said Negroes in America are slave people and they have no rights that white people are bound to respect. If they want to understand the impact of the original slave patrols leading to modern law enforcement, to how capitalism, was expanded and born in this country as a result of slavery, how 75 cents out of every dollar came from cotton after the Civil War and the free labor provided by enslaved people. There's just so much information in here that we were denied in history and public schools, in our own churches and other institutions, that Black people need to nourish their souls and to help demonstrate our resilience so that we can go on into the 21st century and really become assets rather than liabilities to our people and our community. But let me shut up, because you know me, when I get around history, okay, it's like a beautiful woman and her love is like gravity and groceries, and I cannot avoid them. Okay, that right, Sister Luchelle?
Sherilyn, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you, Yusuf.
Yeah, well, Sherilyn, go ahead and pick up thoughts, impressions. You've been doing some reading as well.
Oh, God.
That has primed you for this moment, this conversation.
Yes, for years. I'm
Mhm.
steeped in African American history. Growing up in Chicago, unlike Waterloo, when I read the article, it's like, oh my God, in 62, that late, that her father was still trying to get the basic respect. And I think part of that was because Waterloo had such a small population. My brother's first job out of college was in Waterloo.
John Deere.
John Deere. He didn't
Yeah.
stay long. He stayed a year and a half and got out of there and came back home. But I had grown up in poverty in the projects in Chicago with all Black teachers, all Black principals, all Black everything. My teacher lived about 10 blocks away in a nicer neighborhood. Who would, my favorite teacher, who would bring me over. Sometime I was teacher's pet with Mrs. Reed. But I always knew that Black people were intelligent because all of the leaders in my community that I saw every day were Black people. Not until 69, when I went to what they call a STEM school, or college prep high school for Illinois Institute of Technology, did I meet racism in the face.
Mhm.
I think I was the third class where Black students were allowed in that school, and there were race riots in the cafeteria. When you leave, there's going to be a fight. They're waiting on you. But I was steeped in who I was. I was formed. I was fully formed as a proud Black person. So they couldn't shake me. And to this day, even moving here, where you're going to be shook really hard if you're a Black person, they haven't been able to break me yet. And I thank God. Reverend Wright was my pastor. Oh my God. He is a giant as far as making sure that his church community and anybody that comes in contact with him, as well as Father Flager too, and Farrakhan, they're all brothers from another mother, knows our history, the great inventors we are, the brilliant people we are. Reverend Wright speaks 5 languages fluently. Reverend Otis Moss III, our pastor for the last, I can't remember, but maybe 12 years. Another brilliant person. So in Trinity, we are Afrocentric. We are unapologetically Black. And what's the other part about something Christian? But we don't apologize for being Black at all. We are proud. Yeah. And when I look back, we need NIDCAD all over the place. Yusuf, they're over there on your side of the river.
Yes, ma'am.
For the development of children of African descent. Our kids do better when they know their history, when they know who they are as proud Black descendants of Africa, of a great continent. Hey, just accept that the whole continent is ours. We don't choose over countries because we don't know exactly which country we were stolen from. But the great inventions, I'm so proud I was born in Providence Hospital in Chicago. Daniel Hale Williams' first open heart surgery successfully performed was by him in Providence Hospital. Oh my God. Just before, while we were looking, I said, let me pull up some of this.
Well, you also, Sherilyn, you also had Jake and Ida Carruthers. You had Hakeem Adabudi.
Yes.
You had John G. Jackson.
Yes.
You had all the giants down there in Chicago. I mean, we used to have Hakeem send us a case of books from Third World Press. And we would peddle them on the radio program, the Pan-African Network, that we did for 30 years on KUXL. and take them up to the prisons, to the men and women's correctional facilities, and share, Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization. And
Yes.
Haki published a lot of great books through the Institute for Positive Education.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what was the brother's name? His daughter-in-law was in Obama's White House, who was a journalist in Chicago.
Valerie Jarrett.
Yeah, what was her father-in-law's name?
He was a journalist too.
Jarrett.
Jarrett, yeah. I'll
so
think of it in a minute.
You had a lot of
Yeah.
positive energy coming out of that soil in that
We
community.
did.
And Richard
We
Wright,
did.
when he left Mississippi, said, "I'm going to explore the warmth of other suns." Okay,
That's right. That's
take
right.
my butt to Chicago. All right, and that's exactly what he did.
We
I'm
were
sorry.
blessed.
Go ahead.
We
hon.
were blessed.
Yeah.
It just changes. I'm just shocked to hear that Waterloo was like this, because Chicago was so different. And we are 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 in Chicago, white, Latino, or, and Black. And we have been in power, I'm going to say, really since 1980, when Harold Washington became our first Black mayor. And baby, that was a tough one. And then when he got reelected, by then everybody loved Harold. And I was on my way back into town for Thanksgiving, driving, and he had died. And I tell you, we were crying in my car. And everybody, I called my family, they were crying. Everybody was just so brokenhearted over Harold not being with us. He had done great things for all of Chicago, not for the Black part, but for all of Chicago. The value of Harold Washington just can't be replaced. He will forever be remembered.
Well, that kind of brings us to the essay that we started off with, I think, and that is that, the word was democracy's founding ideals were false when they were written, but Black Americans have fought to make them real, or to make them true. And so, just as you're describing the emergence of our community in a place like Chicago, emergence into power, because you have to think about the daily machine and the crime machines that characterize Chicago life, urban life in the North, and how it was and is the evolution of our political action, our political aspiration, and our activity, organizing, that has made a change and changed the power dynamic in Chicago, just as Hannah Nicole writes, our presence in the country has brought meaning to the idea of democracy. Yusuf, what do you think?
Well, according to American history, the founding of America took place with the writing of the Declaration of Independence, and then with the writing of the Constitution, with enslaved people standing by the authors, providing their every wit and whim, throughout the night. And she points out that the legacy of slavery, America's original sin, has never been fully acknowledged or addressed in terms of its consequences, its perils, its pain and suffering, and how that has traveled across generations down to this day. When I look at Haiti and see that they paid reparations to the French for 200 years for eliminating the capital gains that the French Catholic enslavers and plantation owners would have realized, they sent, for the 200th anniversary of the Haitian Revolution, an invitation to the president of France, who said, oh no, the pain is still too great. We're not coming. We can't participate in this 200th anniversary. It's too painful for us, And I think when we look at American history at every turn, we've pointed out that 10 of the first 12 presidents were enslavers, that 18 of the first 30 justices of the United States Supreme Court were enslavers, that more than 1,800 members of Congress were enslavers. Okay, and what does that say about their values, their conscience, their belief system, their morals or lack thereof, in terms of the founding principles of this country, including the Declaration, the Constitution, which are silent, on the every person, has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, except Negroes and Indians. The 84 references to us as shadow people in the Constitution that say we don't really count. We're only 3/5 of a human being. And it was the Northerners who did not want the Southern states to gain a majority of representatives in Congress who fought for the 3/5 clause in the Constitution to limit the political power of the recently enslaved, not enslaved, but after the Civil War people from the South who would be representatives in Congress, to limit their participation and their strength. And, the piece by Nicole Hannah-Jones is just so powerful and so beautiful, Al, that every time I read it, I learn more and more. Just, the strength that emanates from that document is impressive.
Go through the document you sent, if you would, Yusuf, and maybe is there a particular chapter or verse or paragraph that you'd want to read? I think it'd be great. Brother Mike V, thank you for checking out. He says, it is inevitable that the U.S. will break into two different countries, a constitutional commonwealth of socialists from Massachusetts to Minnesota, and an Anglo-Saxon neo-confederacy across the South from Carolina to Texas. That's interesting. I'd love to have you all think about that and talk about that. Thanks, Brother Mike V, as always, insightful commentary. So, Sherlyn, while Yusuf is picking a piece to read, so where do you see, how do we maximize the value, the opportunity to create narratives that liberate our people, that free us? And part of the challenge has to be, we are so inundated with negative energy, negative stories that attempt to suppress and drown out our own common sense, our own sense of self, that we find ourselves being the proponents of our own destruction and the apologists for policies and practices that keep us enslaved. We have become owners of our own enslavement in many ways. But I think that what we're talking about now is, how do we free ourselves? And what do you see as the steps towards that, Sherlyn?
The steps I see, number one, the 1619 Project is but one of several writings or books. And for those of my brothers and sisters who don't like to read, the book is thick. You can get Audible, and then you can listen to it. There's also books by Ta-Nehisi Coates. We Were 8 Years in Power. Also, Between the World and Me by the same author. And 400 Souls by Ibrahim X. Kendi, and other books by those two authors that basically speak about this same issue, how we have remained enslaved because our minds are enslaved. The laws are built around keeping us enslaved. But how we escape is knowledge, understanding the policies that are in place, understanding how this continues by the poor educational system that they have for our children alone, understanding the lack of opportunity, understanding that our hatred that is turned inward, that causes us to kill each other in gangs and other things, are but a byproduct of this hatred that has been instilled in us through television, through word of mouth, through everything in this society that is white supremacist based, to make us hate ourselves and mistrust each other. It's time for us to wake up, throw the yoke off, start to understand the real enemy. And the number one enemy for us is ignorance. Mm-hmm. And until we understand who we really are, and the fact that the world economy, not just the U.S. economy, was built on slavery. Many inventions and developments that enslaved people developed and invented were stolen because slaves simply could not patent anything. The cotton gin things, there was something that planted corn and cotton that were invented by enslaved people. So what I want to say is we must know our history in order to change our future. Otherwise, this is going to continue on, and we must trust one another. We must learn to love one another. We must stop the hating of those who look like us and understand we are wonderful. We are lovable. I love myself. I love my people. And I hope we can learn to love each other and to trust. I know that was a general answer, but
that's a great answer. That's what I was looking for. Yusuf, jump in.
Well, Nicole Hannah-Jones writes that anti-Black racism runs in the very DNA of this country,
yes,
as does the belief, so well articulated by Abraham Lincoln, that Black people were the obstacle to national unity. The many gains of Reconstruction were met with fierce white resistance throughout the South, including unthinkable violence against the formerly enslaved, wide-scale voter suppression, electoral fraud, and even in some extreme cases, the overthrow of democratically elected biracial governments. Faced with this unrest, the federal government decided that Black people were the cause of the problem and that for unity's sake, it would leave the white South to its own devices. In 1877, President Rutherford B. Hayes, in order to secure a compromise with Southern Democrats that would grant him the presidency in a contested election, agreed to pull federal troops from the South. With the troops gone, white Southerners quickly went about eradicating the gains of Reconstruction. The systemic white suppression of Black life was so severe that the period between the 1880s and 1920s became known as the Great Nadir, or the Second Slavery. Democracy would not return to the South for nearly a century.
Well, here we go.
think even, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Shirley.
I think even with all of that, there became a time in the 1940s when the people who were subjugated in the South realized this is not going to change. Let's get the heck out of Dodge. That began the Great Migration to the North. And through that, as more and more of us started to flee, I think after about 1 million of us escaped, and I'm going to use the word escaped, because after that, they started to try to stem the tide. They started to arrest people at the train station. They started to prevent Black publications from the North who would encourage them to come north. They would lynch people who were trying to escape. As an example, this is what happens if you try to leave here. And some might say, but why? Because their livelihood depended on the cheap or free labor of enslaved people still. Mm-hmm. Think about, what do you call them, sharecroppers. They work in the land of the white landowner. They're getting what? They said 25% will go to you, but at the end of the deal, we got to charge you for food because we let you have credit at the company store. Oh, you needed whatever you needed, and if your kid needed to go to school or whatever, we loaned you the money for that. This is all a trap. This is the same trap that was done in the Appalachian region to those, what do you call that? I forget the name, what the people are over there who live in the Appalachian mountains and region by the, oh God, I forget the chocolate company that was there and they were running the coal and everything.
Hershey, not Hershey.
No, it wasn't Hershey. It was a British company.
Okay.
God. But anyway, it was the same thing. And the song, I forget which country singer, I owe my soul to the company store.
Tennessee Ernie Ford.
Yes.
Tennessee Ernie Ford.
Everything.
16 pounds, and what do you get?
Yes, another the older and deeper in debt.
Deeper
So
in
this
debt.
is a game that's been played black and white, and both don't get it. These
Cheryl Ann, another paragraph from Nicole Hannah Jones' essays. Starting in the late 1800s, Southern states passed a series of laws and codes meant to make
black
slavery's
folks.
racial caste system permanent
Yes.
by denying black people political power, social equality, and basic dignity. They passed literacy tests to keep black people from voting, created all-white primaries for elections. Black people were prohibited from serving on juries or testifying in court against a white person. South Carolina prohibited white and black textile workers from using the same doors. Oklahoma forced phone companies to segregate phone booths. Memphis had separate parking spaces for black and white drivers. Baltimore passed an ordinance outlawing black people from moving onto a block more than half white and white people from moving onto a block more than half black. Georgia made it illegal for black and white people to be buried next to one another in the same cemetery. Alabama barred black people from using public libraries that their own tax dollars were paying for, and black people were expected to jump off the sidewalk to let white people pass and call all white people by an honorific, by a title, though they received none no matter how old they were. In the North, white politicians implemented policies that segregated black people into slum neighborhoods and inferior all-black schools. Hello. Operated whites-only public pools and held white and colored days at the country fair, and white businesses regularly denied black people service, placing whites-only signs in their windows. States like California joined southern states in barring black people from marrying white people, while local school boards in Illinois and New Jersey mandated segregated schools for black and white children. Jesus.
As you're talking, Yusef and Shirley and I was reflecting on a story that I wrote in Insight last week. You might be able to pull it up, might not be able to, but the story was called Own Land, Own Community. And I published excerpts from an interview with Brother Jeffrey Robinson, who's a senior program director at Build Wealth, Minnesota. And, this conversation ties into the practicality of where we are and what we have to do and what our current and recent experiences are. And the article started, I'm going to read about 2 paragraphs of it because it was impactful, the way he framed the work he's doing now to help people become homeowners. He said, my generation is the first generation off the cotton plantation for my family. My mother and my father were sharecroppers. My grandparents were sharecroppers. We got off the plantation because one day my mother and her siblings were on the way to school. In Mississippi, this was a rare occasion because for them, they could only go to school during the cotton picking season if the weather was bad. So at this time, it was raining. My mother and her siblings, her 11 brothers and sisters, got on the bus to go to school. Just as the bus was pulling off, it stopped raining. The owner of the plantation raced across the field to stop the bus at the edge of the plantation before it got off his property. He pulled my mom and her siblings off the bus and told them to go back out in the field and to pick cotton because it had stopped raining. So they were picking this cotton in the mud, picking wet cotton. He goes on to say that when they came home, when the mom came home and asked him how was school today, they said, we didn't go to school because Mr. So-and-so pulled us off the bus and made us go to the field. But that's how present, this dynamic of exploitation. The legacy. And it's not different today from my point of view. So just threw that in there.
Now, we had Setu Jones commissioned to do the cover of a Black History Month program listing all the activities in the Twin Cities.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a picture of a young black child with a bird in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
And the caption underneath the picture said, "Capture knowledge, fly to freedom."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's never been more true than it is today. Capture knowledge, fly to freedom.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I
And so,
think, oh, go ahead, Al.
go ahead. Go ahead.
You were mentioning voting, Yusuf. And my pastor in Chicago, Reverend Otis Moss III, Otis Moss II and first was his father and grandfather. And when Black people were first allowed to vote, Otis Moss, his grandfather, uh, the story goes, he went, put on his suit and, his best clothes. He was going to go vote for the first time. He walked 6 miles to the voting station. When he got there, they said, "Oh no, you don't vote here. You have to vote over at the other town." So he walked 6 miles over there. After he got there, they sent him somewhere else. Moral of the story, and the fact is, he did not get to vote, and he so wanted to vote. He had to walk all the way back home, so dejected, so sad. But it's important that our people understand how important it is to vote.
Mhm.
No one tries to block you from something that's unimportant. No one changes the rules and the laws to keep you from voting if that is not something that will give you power. And for those of us who are saying, and I get upset when I hear somebody say this, "Oh, it doesn't matter if you vote or not." Don't say that to me.
Mhm.
I get very upset.
One devil's as bad as another is another excuse. You know who the
Yes.
first Black elected official in Minneapolis was? A Black woman,
Oh, yeah. What's her name?
Nellie Stone
Nellie
Johnson.
Stone Johnson. Yes.
Got elected to the library board. First Black elected official in St. Paul, Fred Weston, a Black bus driver, got elected
Wow.
city clerk, St. Paul, Minnesota. A lot of
These
history
firsts are
here. A
important.
lot of history here.
They're important.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about what I hear. We talk about the book ban, and
Yeah.
you led into this by
Anti-woke.
saying this is what DeSantis did in Florida because of the impact of 1619 project.
Plain and
And
simple.
that led a movement that had hundreds or dozens at least of jurisdictions
Hundreds.
following
You're right.
that process of trying to choke down information to keep the possibility of white people feeling like they're being charged or
Uncomfortable.
being uncomfortable because of the truth, right? And so Dr. Greg Carr at Africana Studies Department at the Howard University and with the Nubia Narrative Project says, obviously that's crazy that they are doing that, but it's consistent for them. But the
Yes.
ban that he worries about more, I don't have the words for it, is the ban that we have ourselves, the ban
Yes.
that we have in not opening the books.
Hey,
That's
and
the one that's devastating.
How uncomfortable were we supposed to feel for 404 years?
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
To this day.
They don't care.
All right.
They don't care. But I'm glad that DeSantis did that.
Mhm.
I bet more people looked and bought and ordered the 1619 project. I bet
Because of
more
that.
people looked on Netflix, Hulu, because it's on. I saw it. I don't know if it was Netflix or Hulu where I saw the 1619 project. You can't get advertisement like that anywhere. So by him banning it, and that includes not just Black people looking for it, white folks look for it too.
Sure.
So next time he wants to ban something, he needs to think twice. When you take something back, everybody wants it.
That's right. Yeah, banning helps promote sales and awareness. And like you said, that's a good point. Well, so Yusuf, where do we go? How do we continue to educate, to teach ourselves, teach our community, and how do we use this information, knowledge, to promote and to generate real movement towards the freedom that we're talking about? And what does freedom mean for us?
Well, how do we go forward? I think we have to not just say, we're gonna deal with adults. We got to deal with young children. Nicole Hannah-Jones has also written children's books about the 1619 Project. What's the sister's name down at WCCO? Wrote the book on Dr. King for children that's now coming out around the country. I mean, the information is out there. I mean, YouTube. My goodness gracious, you can listen to lectures by John Henry Clark, Yosef Ben Jochanan, Francis Cress Welsing, Bobby Wright. You know, I mean, the list is, and the brother that we keep talking about, Gerald Horn, the University of Houston. Have you read any of his stuff, Sherilyn?
I have not.
He's written 48 books.
Wow.
And he is Dr. Ben and John Clark and Ivan Van Sertima and Francis Welsing all rolled into one. He's tough.
Can I have some titles?
Horne. 48
no titles.
Just
titles.
Google his name on YouTube or Google it. Gerald Horn, 48 books. Listen to his lectures on YouTube for free. Incredible. There's a program called In Depth that is produced by C-SPAN 2, Book TV, on Sundays. It's a 3-hour interview program. And he was interviewed by an interesting Caucasian fellow. Gerald Horn pulled his pants down and took them off without unbuckling his belt or undoing his shoelaces. I mean, he spanked him for 3 hours, and it was just all truth and facts and very civil. You know, he didn't attack him. He just told him the truth. And
Tell the story.
The poor fellow was sort of flabbergasted because he was imprisoned by the truth. He didn't know where to go, which way to turn. And Gerald Horn was waiting for him every time he tried to pull the rug off from underneath him. Said, well, you know, in the American Revolution this, and in the Haitian Revolution that, and in the African continent the other, and down to this day. And he talks about boxing, and he talks about jazz. He talks about so many aspects of Black language, culture, and history that it's scary because he knows so much about them. And
same with Jake Carruthers, man. Jake Carruthers and Asa Hilliard. Yeah.
Asa Hilliard said Black kids have a nasty habit of exceeding whatever expectations we impose upon them.
Yes.
If they're in an environment of love and high expectations, they exceed our expectations by doing even more than we think they're capable of.
Right.
And if they're in an educational environment that lacks love and high expectations, they exceed our expectations by doing even less than we think they're capable of. And been a monster for many years. And you know who my old standby is, okay, scares a lot of people, is Richard Wright. Okay?
Oh, yes.
The Outsider, Lord Today.
I love him.
You know,
his books were great.
Oh, man. Scared people to death.
But you know what? When they talk about inferior Black schools, maybe the ones now may be inferior, but back when I went to school, they weren't. The ones now oftentimes don't have all Black teachers in them. They have white teachers who have no compassion, no love, and basically make us feel unwanted and stupid and all of the negative. But when I was growing up, you had positive role models. You were raised on love by your teachers who would call your parents. Your parents would just show up at the school. And I mean, you didn't want to let them down. I got an excellent education, an excellent one.
Sherilyn, I tell people that I never had a white teacher until I entered high school.
That's when I got one.
In St. Paul, Minnesota. And people accused me of lying. I went to an all-Black Catholic school, St. Peter Claver.
Oh, yeah, I know which one.
We had Black nuns, the Oblate Sisters of Providence. And if one student in that class didn't do their homework, they beat everybody in the classroom. Okay? We had a telephone tree that started at 5:30 in the morning.
Calling your
parents. And we would call up our friends and neighbors and say, look, if you didn't do that homework, you better stick your finger down your throat and throw up awful fast. If we get whooped at school, you're getting whooped at recess, at lunchtime, and we're going to whoop your behind on the way home, too.
That's right.
Okay? And them folk, we did that homework, okay, with
That's
pleasure.
Right.
Listen, what a good conversation. We're going to move on to the balance of the program with Coach Leah. But Yusef, thank you for both topic and the introduction. Thank you, Sherilyn. And we'll continue this conversation. This is important, and we'll keep doing it, okay?
Stay
Yes.
safe. God bless.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane for the balance of the program, our regular Monday feature, and that's checking in with Coach Leah. Coach Leah, how you doing? First of all, are you there? I think we have Coach Leah. Yeah. And we were working on getting her technology to where she was there. I think we might have lost her. You know what though? Yusef, come back in, Yusef, until Leah comes.
Sir.
And Sherlyn, let's keep this conversation going. Reflections on what we're talking about. Yusef?
Well, the essay by Nicole Hannah Jones is just so beautiful, so well written, so powerful, that it's nourishment for the soul, Al. And I think it would benefit anybody who cared to read it. It's not just for Black people. Dr. Yosef Ben-Jochanan pointed out that it's important for Black people to know about other races, languages, and cultures, so that we become better instruments, not just for living together, but for living with other people. Okay, because frequently we come in contact with people from other cultures who either want to belittle or talk down or dehumanize or try and make us feel subordinate to them. So it's important that we have the self-confidence, the self-esteem, the history, and the acknowledgement of our own accomplishments and legacy. Okay, the real truth, not the filtered, watered down rendition, where we saw the Black man with the watermelon sitting on a bale of hay, and then we saw Martin Luther King say, "I have a dream," and that was it. 2 paragraphs on Black history of the world. And
we've got Coach Leah back. You guys hang around just so we'll all be in this conversation together. Let's bring Coach Leah in. Coach, how you doing?
I am well. How is everyone? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, beautiful lady.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Long time no see. Oh my gosh.
Yes, yes.
So go ahead.
Go ahead, Coach Leah.
No, I was just I'm in Las Vegas. I still haven't made it back to back home, but I've had a whirlwind weekend here in Las Vegas. But I wanted to start, before I tell you about my trip so far, I wanted to start with some trending shout outs and some shameless plugs. Okay,
go ahead.
So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was that our Tall Girls United inaugural Wellness, Wealth, and Winning Weekend Conference that we hold every year. We will be holding that every year with the Women's Final Four, the NCAA Division I Women's Final Four, was recently featured in Monarch magazine. Look at this beautiful magazine. Can y'all see that?
Yep.
Wow. Yes.
And we don't really do a lot of magazines these days, but I would tell you, Monarch does a phenomenal job. And it looks like the kind that you would leave on your coffee tables. You know how you buy the coffee table type of magazine. And so we have, there might be some pictures that we can share, but I wanted to show you this beautiful spread that they've done. They did like 4 pages, and we talked about our brunch. They talked about our fashion extravaganza. So our brunch was hosted, moderated by LaChina Robinson of ESPN magazine, or ESPN Sports. And she's one of the broadcasters and analysts for ESPN. And so she graced us as a moderator and did a phenomenal job. And so Sylvia Crawley-Spann and I, who co-founded Tall Girls United, we're just so excited to be able to be featured in, well, it's actually Sylvia's magazine. So there we go. But it was just so wonderful to see. So, look for Monarch magazine in airports, on newsstands, and in Barnes and Nobles in your area, and let us know what you guys think of Monarch as a whole. It's a lifestyle elite. They call it elite lifestyle magazine. So it's pretty cool. So another shameless plug. Of course, we were part of the WNBA All-Star game in the weekend in Vegas. Friday, we were able to get to hang out at Doolittle Community Center, which is part of the Las Vegas Parks and Recs Department. And the WNBA, some of the players hung out with those kids at the Recreation Center and did a camp there. It was really cute. And then later on that Friday, the Las Vegas Aces and the WNBA co-hosted with the Junior NBA program a camp at Center Court of what they call WNBA Live. So you know how whenever there's a big event, they do a wonderful interactive event for the community free of charge. Well, the WNBA and the Las Vegas rolled out the red carpet and did a phenomenal job in the Mandalay Bay's Convention Center for the young people in the community there. So that was a lot of fun. Really quickly, Saturday morning, the NBRPA Legends had a brunch, and they featured Tall Girls United. And so we were really happy to be featured there. And that was hosted by WNBA veterans Rooster Brown and Sylvia Crawley-Spann. So we did that in the morning, had some yummy food, and shared some really heartfelt and fun stories about everyone's journey since playing basketball. So that was really, really nice to be able to have that platform. And then, of course, Saturday evening was the WNBA All-Star Game. And so, and everybody just had a lot of fun. Of course, it was a huge tribute and huge honor to have Brittany Griner with her sisters at All-Star. And they just had a lot of fun. And it was great for all of us to see all of them having a really great time. And so, yeah, that was just kind of how I spent my last few days, everybody.
Sounds exciting. And I want to thank you for the pioneering work you're doing with us, with your podcast, After the Whistle. Let's promote that as well.
Well, thank you for that. So on Tuesdays, we do a live stream, which was at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then we go to podcasts. So wherever you find your favorite podcasts, we like to feature Amazon, Apple, and Spotify as our main platforms. And then we go to print, which I'm most excited about that, actually, where we get to tell the story and you get to read about it. I mean, that seems to be an old-fashioned art for some strange reason. But those of us that love to read, you'll be able to read about the things that we talk about and that you see in Insight News. And if you don't get the actual paper, then definitely go to www.insightnews.com or look for our e-editions as well. And I really still have to ask everyone, please be sure to subscribe to Insight News, our YouTube channels, Black Press USA. Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. We are counting on all of you to help us be able to grow so we can tell a lot more fascinating stories. So there we go.
There we go. Thank you so much. We're going to close out in a couple of seconds. A note. Do we want to do something? We do want to remind people again, along with our friends at the Department of Health, to pay attention to COVID-19, to get vaccinated. There's also going to be a COVID vaccine and flu shot clinic coming up in Brooklyn Center. A series of them. You see the promotion right here, but at the CAPI IOC 5930 Brooklyn Boulevard, Brooklyn Center, and as early as I think this week, and a schedule for the next several months. Well, we're out of time. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Coach, we'll see you later.